We voted. You're paying for my daughter's birthday party. That's what my sister told me when I asked why she used my card. The authorized card I had opened for our mom to pay nearly $4,000 for Lydia's birthday celebration. My parents took her side, calling me selfish and accusing me of not knowing how to make sacrifices for family, just because I called out what she did. After that argument, I cancelled the authorized card and worked with the bank to recover the money. Tell me if I was wrong for doing that. Anyway, my name's Roland. I'm 29, and I work as a senior software engineer at a tech company in Oregon. I've been with them for 7 years, first as a part-time college hire, now in a full-time role. The pay is great, over $150,000 after taxes. And since I'm single, I've managed to buy myself a modest house and a decent car. While my career is solid, my personal life is a bit lonely. I only see a handful of close friends and sometimes grab dinner with co-workers. Some of you may be wondering, what about your family? The truth is, I did have one I cared deeply for. My parents, my older sister Alice, and my niece Lydia, who I loved like my own child. But I was the one who eventually distanced myself from them. It all started about a year ago on Lydia's 6th birthday. I was at work, knee-deep in tasks, when my phone rang. It was Alice. I let it ring once before picking up, and without wasting time, she told me, "Roland, Lydia's birthday is this weekend. Make sure you come." I said, "Got it," and she hung up. A few minutes later, she texted me the time and location. The restaurant name made me pause. It was a luxurious spot known for lavish kids' parties, buffet spreads, private play zones, entertainers, and gift bags for the little guests. With nearly 20 people invited, I estimated the total cost was around $3,000. I put the phone down and got back to work. Not even 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time it was Mum, reminding me not to forget a gift. I smiled. That was just like her, always making sure everyone's covered. That Saturday at 5 p.m., I showed up at the venue with a gift I had wrapped the night before, a toy cooking set with dolls, tiny pots and pans, a pink apron, and a little electric stove. It wasn't fancy, but I knew Lydia, and I knew she'd love it. When I walked into the private room, I saw a few family members, relatives from Mum's side, cousins, and both my parents. Lydia spotted me and came running with a piece of cake in her hand. "Uncle Ro," she shouted, hugging me tightly like we hadn't seen each other in ages. I knelt down, smiled, and said, "I've got something for my little chef," then handed her the box. She dropped to the floor and tore through the wrapping paper. Her eyes lit up. "Oh my gosh, it even has a mini oven," she gasped. "Uncle, this looks just like the one in the video I watched yesterday." Seeing Lydia smile, I nodded and smiled back, thinking that moment was enough. But not even 30 seconds later, I heard Alice's voice from the dinner table, calm even, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're a senior software engineer, make good money, and you get your niece a toy set that costs a few dozen bucks." I looked up. She was still holding her drink, eyes fixed on the table, like she was simply making an observation. Then my dad chimed in, his voice low and slow. "She's right. You're her Uncle Roland. That kind of gift, people might look at it the wrong way." My mum added gently, in her usual instructive tone, "You don't have to spend a fortune, but it wouldn't hurt to put in a little more thought for a child's birthday, Roland." I stood there, my hands still resting on Lydia's shoulders. No one said a word in my defense. Some pretended not to hear. Others stared down at their plates. I nodded and replied in a steady voice, "All right, I'll be more thoughtful next time." I thought about walking out, but it was Lydia's special day. and I didn't want to ruin it. Still, inside I felt like I had just been pushed out of the celebration I'd made an effort to be a part of. After the greetings, everyone slowly took their seats. The party began with the birthday song playing on a big screen, the kids singing along. Lydia, wearing a paper crown, blew out the candles on her two-tiered purple cake and beamed as everyone clapped and cheered. I sat at the far end of the long banquet table, between two cousins I barely kept in touch with anymore. They talked about family matters, their kids' schools, and rising mortgage rates. A little while later, Alice stood up and clapped her hands for attention. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate Lydia's birthday," she said loudly. "It only comes once a year, so this time I wanted to make it a bit more special, to give her a memory to hold on to." Everyone clapped, some even whistled. Then she glanced at me, and still smiling, added, "And a special thanks to Uncle Roland, who's always there for her, even with his packed schedule." I smiled faintly and gave a small nod. I knew that line was just for show. The look in her eyes didn't match the words. Then dinner was served. Honey roasted chicken, salad, kid-friendly pizza, spaghetti, soda, and snacks. The vibe felt warm. People passed dishes, exchanged stories, and laughed at memories I barely remembered. About 30 minutes later, the part the kids had been waiting for arrived. Music got louder, the lights dimmed, and through the door came a clown in a bright, colorful outfit. The kids squealed with excitement. Lydia jumped up laughing and pulled along two of my cousin's kids. One looked 5, the other maybe 3. I couldn't remember their names, only that they showed up to every family event like clockwork. The clown started twisting balloon, animals, swords, poodles, and performed magic tricks, like pulling scarves out of thin air. The kids cheered with every trick. I sat quietly in the back, watching it all like a spectator at a show I never bought a ticket for. After the performance, a staff member wheeled in, a table full of party favors. Each child got a personalized gift bag with candy, stickers, small toys, and even a coupon for a future visit. I looked around and took it all in. Balloons covering the ceiling, a banner with Lydia's name, a MasterChef Junior-themed photo corner, and even a photographer capturing every moment. It was clear nothing was missing. Between the private room, the themed decor, the cake, clown, custom gift bags, and photographer, the party must have cost over $3,000, maybe even closer to $4,000. My family wasn't poor, but they weren't exactly rich enough to throw a party like this without planning it out very carefully. I started wondering who was covering the cost of the party. Maybe Alice had come into some money recently, or perhaps Mom had helped out, or maybe my brother-in-law had been doing well in his business. At that point, I had no idea. About 30 minutes later, as the kids began to tire and the adults drifted into casual conversation, I noticed Alice getting up from the table. She grabbed her small purse and briskly walked toward the front counter. I was a little surprised, but a thought crossed my mind. Maybe she'd gotten a big bonus, or Mom had given her some extra money. Honestly, I'd be relieved if Alice was covering the cost, and I'd be happy for her. But not even a minute later, my phone buzzed. I glanced down at the notification. "You've just made a payment of $3,142.20 at Bounce and Buy's Playhouse." I froze for a moment. I immediately opened my banking app and checked the details. The card used wasn't my primary one, but a secondary card I had given to Mum nearly 3 years ago for household bills like electricity, water, and gas. I clearly remembered telling her, "This card's just for household stuff, okay? Let me know if you don't need it anymore, and I'll cancel it." Since then, I hadn't noticed any strange activity. just regular bill payments. But now, that card had been swiped for the entire birthday party, and I had no idea. I looked up toward the front desk. Alice was still there, signing something on a receipt, with a staff member beside her, smiling and nodding. A rush of questions flooded my mind. Should I walk over? Should I ask what had just happened? Should I interrupt everything and demand they cancel the charge? Or should I stay quiet and wait for someone to bring it up? Maybe they planned to keep it quiet as if it was already a done deal. I glanced over at Lydia, still sitting on the floor, happily playing with the toy cooking set I'd brought. She was completely oblivious, smiling as she held up a plastic pot, turning to the boy beside her and saying, "It's ready, eat up." I stood there, phone in hand, the bank notification still glowing on the screen, feeling blindsided by my family for the first time. I stepped out from the corner of the room and walked straight over to Bryce, Alice's husband, who was chatting with two of our cousins, still holding a half-finished beer. I stood right in front of him and said, my voice low but firm, "Bryce, could you take Lydia and the other kids outside? Maybe walk them to the play area. I need to handle something, and I don't want the kids to witness any arguing." He paused, furrowing his brows as though he didn't understand, then glanced at Alice, who was still at the counter, almost as if waiting for some signal. But I didn't look away, and my serious expression must have said enough. After a moment, he gave a quick nod. A few minutes later, the kids were led out of the room. I turned back and faced my parents. Alice returned to the table, her wallet still in hand. I looked directly at her and said, keeping my voice steady, "You used my card to pay. Why didn't you ask me first?" She put her wallet down, crossed her arms, and replied, "We took a vote. You were chosen to cover the birthday party for my daughter." I stared at her in disbelief. A vote? Who voted? My mum's sweet and casual voice chimed in, as if she were discussing the weather. "Well, you're single, you make good money, and honestly, no one else in the family could afford a party like this. Your sister wanted to give Lydia something special to remember, and we all thought it made sense for you to take care of it." I swallowed hard and asked, "It's her daughter's party, not mine. If you wanted me to help, you should have asked. Instead, you used my card without saying a word." Just then, my dad set his drink down and said, his voice dry and flat, "You can afford it. Why are you making such a big deal out of a few thousand? It's not much with what you earn." I turned back to Alice, trying to stay composed. "Do you not see anything wrong with this?" She responded immediately, "No, you don't have kids. You don't pay for tuition, insurance, or daily expenses like we do. You live alone and earn a lot. Why shouldn't you contribute something to the family? It's just once a year." At that moment, I had nothing left to say. I simply walked out, leaving the birthday party behind, with everyone watching me go. I couldn't help but think back to when I was a kid. Whenever the family needed to spend money on something, my parents always asked my sister first, "Have you bought your textbooks yet? What prom dress are you considering? How many friends are you inviting to your birthday this year?" And I would stand nearby, listening. That's how I learned. My turn always came later. Most of my school clothes were from the end of season sales Mum would pick up. They weren't bad, but they were always the just enough kind of choice. My backpack was basic, and my sneakers were never the latest model. I never had birthday parties. Just a small meal on the day Dad happened to have off. Maybe a few slices of pizza and a chocolate cake from Walmart. No balloons, no friends over, no birthday candles. Strangely, I was always okay with it. I never asked for more. Not because I didn't want more, but because I knew if I did, Mom would worry, and Dad would go quiet and change the subject. That's why I learned early on to stay silent. I didn't ask for things I didn't want, to add more pressure to a house that already felt stretched thin. Back then, I thought it was a small sacrifice to keep the peace. But after my niece's birthday party that day, I realized something. Maybe I had been taught from the beginning that there was never really a part meant just for me. When I reached adulthood and went off to college, I was lucky enough to get into software engineering, the field I had loved since I was a kid. At that time, my family wasn't in a good financial position, so I took out student loans to afford school. I didn't overthink it. As long as I could study, I believed I'd figure out the rest. From my first year, I started working part-time. During the day, I was a teaching assistant for an intro class. At night, I worked the counter at a bakery near the dorms. On weekends, I'd install windows or fix laptops for other students to earn more. I can't remember how many cups of watered-down coffee I drank, how many late-night fast food meals I scarfed down at 11:02 p.m., or how many times I passed out on a lab desk. But I do remember one thing. I never once asked my family for extra money. There was only one exception. In my sophomore year, when my laptop died right before midterms, I texted my mum saying, "My computer won't power on. I think I'll have to get it fixed." That night, she transferred me $300, along with a short message. "Keep going. We don't have much, but your dad and I believe in you." I read the message in silence. I didn't reply right away. I knew sending me that money wasn't easy for her, and I knew I had no excuse to complain after that. No matter how tired I got, I had to keep going. Then I remembered something from 3 years ago. At the time, my mom had just retired, and my dad was still working part-time at a bookstore near home. The pay wasn't much, but he said it kept him from getting bored. One evening, my mom called me. Her voice was tired but gentle, as always. "The electricity bill this month is high. I don't even know why." After she said that, I didn't ask questions. I didn't try to break it down or offer advice. I opened my laptop, logged into my account, and set up a supplementary credit card for her. Along with the card, I included a small handwritten note that said, "This card is just for household bills. Electricity, water, gas. If you ever stop needing it, let me know and I'll cancel it." For the next 2 years, everything seemed fine. No unusual charges, just regular household expenses. But then that night, at the birthday party, I saw the notification. Over $3,000 had been charged. Sitting there in the dark, my phone's bedtime alarm snapped me back to reality. I reached over to turn it off, then opened my banking app. The $3,842 charge sat boldly among transactions I never authorized. I went to the card management section and scrolled down. There it was, the supplementary card under my mum's name, the one I'd issued 3 years ago, with the simple instruction, "Only use it for household bills." Without hesitation, I tapped Lock Card. A confirmation screen popped up, asking if I was sure. I didn't hesitate. 3 seconds later, the status changed to deactivated. And with that, I knew exactly what I needed to do in the morning. Not to ask for the money back, but to let them know I wasn't brushing this off. It wasn't about the amount. It was about how they had taken my silence for granted all these years. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, made myself a cup of black coffee, and opened the family group chat, which had only ever lit up when someone needed something from me. This time, I didn't sugarcoat anything and typed a message demanding that the $3,842.20 charged on the supplementary card I gave my mom for household bills be repaid within 3 days, informing them that the card had been deactivated. Less than 10 minutes later, responses flooded in, with Alice attacking me for bringing up money so early, and my mom justifying it by saying I was financially stable, and it wasn't a big deal. My dad claimed I wasn't handling it right. None of them took responsibility or acknowledged their mistake. Instead, they turned it back on me. They didn't even mention repaying the money. No one asked how much I had worked for that money, or how many times I sacrificed for the family. Later, I received messages from relatives advising me to talk to my mum and sister gently, telling me not to let money ruin family love. But no one ever considered how hard I had worked or how I felt at that party, silently paying for everything. I stayed silent the entire day, hoping they'd get the message. But that night, my phone lit up with calls from my mom, Alice, and my dad, all within 10 minutes. I didn't answer a single one. My phone buzzed with a voicemail from my mom. When I played it, her voice was trembling from crying. She said, "Roland, please don't make this worse. I know you're angry, but I never thought it would come to this. I didn't mean any harm." A few minutes later, Alice sent me one last message. No sugarcoating. She said, "If you're going to sue, then do it. But don't expect this family to speak to you again." I stared at her message for a while. I didn't feel hurt or sad. I just felt a strange sense of relief. In that moment, it hit me. The so-called family I had been desperately trying to protect existed only as long as I stayed quiet, nodded along, and kept paying. The moment I stopped doing that, everything, care, kindness, and the bond, vanished without a trace. The next morning, I called the bank to dispute a $3,142 $20 transaction made with the secondary card. I explained that the card had been issued for my mom, meant only for basic household expenses, and there was no agreement that allowed her to give it to anyone else. The bank representative asked me a few questions. I answered briefly, but firmly. The call lasted no longer than 10 minutes. Before we ended, they said, "We'll start the investigation today. You'll be eligible for a reversal if the transaction is found to be unauthorized." I thanked them and hung up. By noon, I received a text from my mom. It wasn't angry, but disappointed. She wrote, "I never thought you'd choose this path. No matter what happens, we're still family. Why did you have to push it this far?" I stared at her message for a while, then set my phone down without replying. 3 days after I filed the complaint, the bank confirmed via email that an investigation was underway. The transaction would be on hold, and I'd get a refund if it was verified as unauthorized. As I was folding clothes and preparing for a work trip the next week, my phone rang again. This time, it was my dad. I was about to decline the call like I had before, but something made me pause and pick up. His voice came through, full of anger. He asked, "Do you want to take this that far?" I didn't respond right away. He pressed on. "I don't get it. Why are you making this so hard? It was just a birthday party. The girl had fun, and now you're turning it into lawsuits and drama. Is it worth it?" I answered slowly, "Dad, this isn't about a birthday party. It's about respect." I explained that the card was for a specific purpose, and no one consulted me before using it. Instead of an apology, everyone was turning it back on me. There was silence on the other end. Then, he exhaled like he didn't want to argue anymore. "Fine, do what you want, but if you go all the way with this, don't expect to come back." I didn't say anything. By then, I had already understood that in this family, being welcomed back always came with one condition. I had to stay silent, accept everything, and play the role of the understanding one. The call ended without a goodbye. After the call, I turned off my phone for the rest of the day. I didn't check any messages or open the family group chat. I needed silence, a silence of my own, to cut myself off from all the noise, from the people who used to call themselves family. That evening, when I finally powered my phone back on, I saw 3 new messages. They weren't from my dad, Mom, or Alice. They were from my cousin, the one who had always stayed quiet, even when she saw me being taken advantage of. She wrote, "You did the right thing, but you'll probably never be recognized for it. I've heard what they say about you. Cold, ungrateful. None of them were willing to admit they were wrong. She didn't dare speak up, but she understood. And in that moment, I realized how rare it was to be understood. That day ended with no apologies. No one reached out to see if I was okay or needed anything. Only silence remained. But this time, it was the silence I created to protect whatever was still mine. A week later, the bank confirmed the transaction was unauthorized and the amount would be refunded within 3 business days. When I saw the $3,142 appear back in my account, it didn't feel like a win. It felt more like picking up a shirt that had once been ripped out of my hands, worn, wrinkled, and stripped of meaning. In the days that followed, no one called to apologize. No one said, "We crossed a line." The family group chat remained, but no one had said anything since I requested the money back. I didn't delete the group, I just muted it, not because I was holding on to hope, but because I wanted the right to choose when I saw them, instead of waiting for them to decide when I should. Since that day, my life has shifted into a quieter, tidier rhythm, clearer than ever before. I still work at the same company, and on weekends, I go hiking. Some afternoons, I do nothing but make a cup of coffee, play an old playlist, and sit on the balcony watching the sun slowly sink behind the buildings. I learned to cook and how to buy things I liked without wondering if someone else needed my help more. I even started meeting new people, not anything serious, but enough to remind myself I could still open up. Then, about a month ago, on a Saturday afternoon, I was in the kitchen when the doorbell rang. I looked at the screen, and it took me a few seconds to process what I saw. My parents and Alice standing outside my door. I opened the door just a crack, leaving about half a meter between us. No one spoke at first. My mom looked down at her feet, clutching her purse like she was unsure. After about 30 seconds, my dad spoke first, his voice lower and softer than I remembered. He said, "I want to talk for a bit, if you'll let me." I nodded, but didn't invite them in. Then, my mom looked up, her words uneven. "I know we were wrong. That whole thing shouldn't have happened. I didn't realize how hurt you were. I'm sorry I didn't say anything. I just stood there." Alice finally spoke, her voice softer than usual. "Maybe I'm just tired. You're not the bad one here. What happened that day? Yeah, it went too far. I was wrong. Mom was wrong. But we want to make it right now." I looked at her and realized I wasn't angry anymore. But I didn't feel anything else either. Then my dad added one last thing. "Even if you're not ready to forgive us, we'd like you to come back, have dinner, and talk like we used to." I paused, not because I was moved, but because I realized that in their minds, coming back meant pretending nothing had happened. It meant small talk at dinner and going back to how things were. I didn't raise my voice or outright say no. I simply answered, "I forgive you, but I'm not coming back. I'm done being the one who has to stay silent." No one said anything after that. My mom nodded slightly. My dad avoided my gaze, and Alice just looked at me for a long moment before turning away. I walked them to their car. No hugs, no goodbyes. But I didn't slam the door either. There was one thing I kept clear in my heart. Forgiveness is something I give for my peace, but there's nothing left to go back to. Before I wrap up the story, there's one more thing I want to share. Even though I'm no longer in contact with my parents or Alice, I still video call Lydia regularly. You're probably wondering how that's possible. I do it through Alice's husband, my brother-in-law, Bryce. Some might be surprised he's stuck in the middle, but he's never said anything that hurt me. Since everything went down, he's stayed in touch, and he's the one who agreed to let me call Lydia every weekend. She always lights up with the biggest smile when she sees me. She tells me about school, shows off her drawings, and asks If I still have the little mini oven I gave her. That's all, but it's more than enough. And before I end, I want to ask 2 things from those of you who've stayed with me to the end. First, was I wrong for doing everything I could to get the money back after they used my card without permission? And second, a lighter one. Lydia is about to turn 7. I've been thinking about what to get her for her birthday. The family probably won't invite me, but I plan to ask Lydia and Bryce to have ice cream, just the 3 of us. If you have any fun or thoughtful gift ideas, please drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear them. And if this story has resonated with you, whether it's about boundaries, self-respect, or that feeling of not belonging in your own family, I'd love to hear your thoughts.